Tuesday Treasure, and it's Tuesday. So I wrote this back in '07. Um, Still applies, I guess. Recently, I was reading an old edition of the Vineyard Gazette, Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket Sound, part of Dukes County, Massachusetts, and came across this article, which started the old rumination gears clicking. The Vineyard Gazette, volume 29, number 30, Friday, October 30th, 1874, Edgartown. The ship Mogul of Boston, Captain William Freeman, has been burned at sea. No particulars are given, but it is stated that all hands were saved and landed at Tahiti. The ship sailed from Liverpool on the 23rd of last April for San Francisco with a cargo of coal, and it's supposed that the fire originated from spontaneous combustion. The Mogul was 1,200 tons burthen, rated A1, and was built at Kennebunkport in 1869. She was owned by J. Henry Sears and Company and others of Boston. The cargo of the Mogul consisted of soft steam coal, and her destruction, together with the other Boston ships, the Sierra Nevada and the Pocahontas, this season from the same cause, has excited considerable attention in the marine and insurance circles. Besides these disasters, several English vessels carrying coal from England have met with similar accidents. Some 12 foreign vessels laden with coal bound south of the equator have also been destroyed by fire, and there are others at sea for the safety of which fears are entertained. One of these, bound from Liverpool from San Francisco, is now 175 days out. Clipper ships could make it around the Horn from Boston to San Francisco in less than 100 days. And several others have had to put into South American ports with their cargoes on fire. The 3 Boston ships were among the finest belonging to that port. So the coal caught fire and the crew abandoned ship and landed at Tahiti. When I see the name Sears pop up in an article, it grabs my attention. This same J. Henry Sears of Brewster wrote Brewster Shipmasters, which includes another more historical account of the wreck of the ship Mogul. Captain Freeman writes as follows. In November 1853, on the passage from Liverpool to Bath, the Maine was lost on a bar at the mouth of the Kennebec River. In 1859, soon after leaving Boston on the ship Undaunted, part of the crew mutinied, and I was severely wounded. But after a consultation with the officers, I decided to go on and finish the voyage to St. John, Nova Scotia, where the mutineers were turned over to the U.S. consul and by him sent back to Boston. On the passage of the ship Mogul from Liverpool to San Francisco, the cargo of coal took fire by spontaneous combustion on July 26, 1874. We remained by the ship until August the 7th, when we were compelled to leave. Having prepared 3 boats, we divided the crew of 27 men as equally as possible, and at 7 o'clock on the evening of August 7th, in latitude 1753 south, longitude 125 minutes west, we left the ship with instructions to try to reach the Marquesas Island, 2,100 miles distant. This all were fortunate enough to do after 11 and 12 days. Remained on the island 5 days when we were taken in a small sloop to the island of Nukahoya, where we found the French governor and placed ourselves in his care. After about 2 weeks, we were taken in a schooner to Tahiti, and from there were sent by U.S. consul to San Francisco, where we arrived 4 months after leaving the ship. It appears Freeman had some rough commands. Captain Sears gave him command of the Ocean King after the Mogul burned. When the crew abandoned ship, they were bound from San Francisco with that load of coal. Can you imagine sailing 2,100 miles west, halfway across the Pacific to some islands in a lifeboat, 9 men per boat? Lima, Peru was only 1,500 miles to the east. I did a little more research and learned that these lifeboats were 33 feet long, had 10 oars and a sail. The double-banked, 10-oared, self-righting and self-emptying lifeboat on its transporting carriage ready for launching is the savior of many a sailor. There are prevailing easterly trade winds just south of the equator where they abandoned ship, so they probably sailed 200 miles per day in their little 33-foot lifeboats. Those small islands are not much of a target to hit after that many miles. They must have been very confident in their navigation skills. Was it typical for sailors to be involved in so many shipwrecks? With my 40 years of sailing experience, I've had my own share of mishaps. My 18-foot Buccaneer day sailor, a Chrysler boat, Windrose, had a centerboard trunk with an opening at the top that's 8 or 10 inches above the waterline. Normally, this should keep any water from shipping aboard, but if you load too many people in the boat and it heels over far enough in the breeze, water can make its way via the trunk to the bilge. Once water comes aboard, the boat sits even lower in water, and the vicious circle allows even more water in through the top of the trunk. Unless you can pump very quickly or unload the boat, she's going down. The boat got very sluggish. Water entered the cockpit through the self-bailers, and she just lay down in the water. All aboard had life jackets, and a nearby motorboat ferried my passengers to shore. The only loss was a tennis shoe and a pair of sunglasses. In this case, the boat turned turtle, and it was shallow enough in this part of the lake that the tip of the 14-foot mast actually got stuck in the mud. Releasing the front stay allowed me to unstep the mast and lower the sail underwater. Then we were able to drag the upside-down boat to shore, roll her back over, and the next morning finally bail her out and haul her out on the trailer. Maybe I should look into one of those self-righting, self-emptying lifeboats. Now I know why my dad was always so serious about having a life jacket aboard for every passenger. I never violated this rule because of his insistence, very much like the lifeboats in Captain Freeman's saga. The second lesson learned is that you always stay with the boat. I was able to keep my 5 passengers with me by the upside-down hull until help arrived. Even though the lakeshore was not that far away, it would have been much more dangerous for them to strike out swimming for shore than just hanging on to the floating boat, even if it was capsized. After writing to the Bayliner company about my mishap, I discovered mine wasn't the first accident where this design flaw occurred with the centerboard trunk. They sent me a kit to raise the trunk opening even higher above the waterline and a sticker to indicate that 4 passengers or 750 pounds was the load limit. I never had that problem again, but one day out near the mouth of Bass River, I was moving at a pretty good clip when my tiller broke. Once your tiller is 25 years old, you should inspect it closely before depending on it. Without a way to control the rudder, you've pretty much lost control of the boat. I was near the rock jetty, and the wind was going to push me on the rocks on the Dennis side of the river, so I jumped out to fend off the rocks. There was an adrenaline rush as I finally got the sails down and the boat under control. Both of us banged against the rocks and suffered a few bruises. I was able to pull out on a sandbar and rig up enough of a tiller with the broken pieces to sail back across to the Yarmouth side of the river where my trailer was parked. This was a fairly minor wreck, but it could have been much worse. My final shipwreck was a little more dramatic. I was sailing my homemade catboat on Lake Hefner in Oklahoma City when a gust of wind came rolling across the lake and snapped my mast off smooth with the deck. The mast, gaff, and boom all missed my passenger and me, but it was quite a surprise to hear that loud crack and see the whole rig lying in the water. The hull was unharmed, so we just dropped anchor and raised our orange distress flag waiting for help. An anchor is another accessory that my dad would never leave home without. Who would think that sailing out on a pretty summer day, you would need your anchor? Without one, I would have been blown miles away to the north end of the lake. These stories remind me a bit about life, too. Keep your life under control with a sound tiller and rudder. When hardships come upon you, remember to grab that life jacket. And when there's no other recourse, use the anchor to keep you from going adrift. Well, I did want to share the picture of a little 18-foot Buccaneer. See if I share the screen. What happens here? There she is, the wind rose. Hopefully you can see. It was a fun little boat. I sailed it for 20 years and had a lot of good times. So there's your Tuesday treasure, all about shipwrecks. If you've never been aground and you're a sailor, you eventually will go aground or have a problem. Have a good day.